Long ago, a group of elves discovered that our moon had been replaced. It did not take long for masters of the arcane to find the original moon, where it slumbered alongside the gods of old. The elves used the real moon as a lighthouse and perfected interdimensional travel. Elven scholars who dedicated their lives to this endeavor came to be known as moon elves. First it was a title, then it became a cult, and after the fall of the Elven Empire, they even became a subrace. Ambitious elves, no longer content with their own gods, started to worship these distant gods without ever asking why or how such ancient entities had been banished in the first place. In the following millennia, they brought countless catastrophes upon themselves, and sometimes upon the whole world. One of them was the Khephurath. The elves used the connection between the original moon and its replacement to carve a path between dimensions. But it was not a one-way passage, and the shepherd star guided these doom manifest into our world. The earth opened its maw, and Nemesis came right through it. It saw the sun in the morning sky and challenged it. Nemesis grew violently and moved fast. People far away woke to a false dawn, as a giant bleeding monstrosity stood upon the horizon. But that was only the harbinger. The Khephurath poured out from the gaping wound on earth. They were bursting into reality, as though reality itself was new to them, so to speak. Almost every one of them seemed like a cluster of different creatures, rather than forming a coherent structure. This was their essence, morphological competition. Living things have their own structure, a body plan, a template. The cells in our bodies have special roles assigned to them. We begin to form a set number of arms and legs at the very beginning of our development, unless some abnormality occurs. For the Khephurath, such instructions do not exist. Every group of cells race against each other to come into existence, from a single joint, an arm, a wing, and a face competing, racing against each other without a care for the greater good of the creature they are forming. For such creatures, an arm does not always have to end with a hand. It might branch into a new chest, which itself might branch into new appendages, like an ever-blooming flower. This process repeats itself at every opportunity. A wound, for us, is a gate for countless possibilities to them. The invasion began in the late 3rd millennium BC and lasted for only 40 days. Yet more than 4 millennia later, the world still bears its scars. No one agrees on how it ended, but no one forgets how it started. They dubbed it the dawn of the false sun. Entire civilizations changed their course to survive, and those that did not ceased to exist. Scholars of the time tried to find their weaknesses and fight back, but every creature was so different from the next that the effort seemed pointless. In the end, however, they managed to at least categorize them. First, they realized that not all of the mutations these creatures possessed were beneficial, so they divided them into 3 categories. +1, net positive. These mutations were generally beneficial to the creature or supported one another. A Khephurath might develop an unusually heavy body alongside additional limbs capable of carrying that weight, or a new sensory organ alongside the structures necessary to make use of it. 0, net neutral. These mutations might provide slight advantages or disadvantages, but neither was significant enough to substantially affect the creature's behavior or chances of survival. Many structures found on these creatures seemed to serve no purpose at all, yet caused no great harm either. Lastly, -1, net negative. These mutations actively hindered the creature's capabilities and could sometimes lead directly to its demise. Legs designed for running fast stuck to a heavy creature, secondary systems that acted like a parasite, or sometimes a beneficial thing, like additional sensory organs placed under the foot of the creature and slowed them down. Morphological competition did not seek perfection. It merely allowed everything to try. Second categorization stemmed from a specific class interaction. It was the overall size of the creature. They divided them into 4 groups. Lesser Khephurath measured 1.5 meters or below. Common Khephurath ranged from 1.5 to 4 meters. As their name suggests, creatures within this range were encountered more frequently than any other. Brutes range from 4 to 15 meters. Anything above 15 meters was classified as colossal. Considering Nemesis, some Khephurath might reach celestial proportions, and nothing suggests that even this is their limit. Then scholars had to specify their usual habitats. Morphological competition pushes a large portion of the Khephurath towards being eurobiotic, meaning they are capable of surviving in multiple types of habitats thanks to the mutations they possess. A creature adapted to the depths of a lake might still possess enough redundant organs to drag itself onto land. One dwelling underground might carry structures left over from an aquatic existence it had never experienced. Their bodies were not designed for their environments. Sometimes they simply contained enough possibilities that one of them happened to work. They also seemed to form several different types of packs. After killing one, knowing whether the danger still lurked in the shadows was vital information. Scholars therefore categorized the Khephurath according to the social structures they displayed: solitary, colonial, fragmented, modular, swarm, composite, and temporary or permanent packs. Some hunted alone. Some gathered in colonies, despite showing little awareness of one another. Others existed as fragmented organisms, with individual creatures behaving like separated parts of something larger. Modular Khephurath could separate and reconnect parts of themselves. Swarms consisted of countless smaller creatures acting together, while composites appeared to be several distinct organisms, physically or behaviorally functioning as one. Packs were perhaps the strangest. Unlike true colonies, their members did not necessarily share a common origin or even a similar anatomy. Completely different Khephurath could temporarily cooperate for reasons scholars struggled to understand. Some alliances lasted only for the duration of a hunt. Others appeared permanent. Lastly, their roles were specified. These could be simple roles such as drone, scout, or mother, or more specialized classes such as web weaver, priest, evolving, and nest. A scout encountered in one region might have nothing physically in common with a scout found elsewhere. One might possess dozens of eyes. Another might have none. What connected them was function. Web weavers altered the environments around them. Mothers provided a connection to Lutu, a pocket dimension intrinsically tied to Khephurath biology. The Khephurath used their souls to open portals into Lutu, from which they drew a material known as umaru. Almost everything they consumed was sent there, both flesh and soul. Over time, Lutu's influence would tear these things apart on an existential level. They would lose their structure, their identities breaking down, as they slowly merged with everything else trapped within. Since this ever-changing sludge of biomass also contained souls, it tore them apart and merged them with one another as well. People considered that it might be a hell structure. If this assumption was true, it meant that either Nemesis was smart enough to create such a thing, or there were other Khephurath gods yet to be dreaded. Special classes usually emerge from special interactions with Lutu or Umaru. Web weavers, for example, could spit out Umaru and weave it like a web. They layered the substance upon itself until it stabilized. Within these webs, the rules of the current dimension became weaker, resulting in small Lutu-like areas that could be used for various purposes. Priests were able to project Lutu's influence into our dimension to unmake things, which is why the Khephurath were sometimes referred to as the Ungod. When a priest died, the connection became unstable. Lutu's influence would violently expand into the dimension surrounding the corpse before collapsing back into itself. Healing was another issue. When a Khephurath was wounded, it did not heal in the traditional sense. Instead, it drew Umaru from Lutu and allowed new structures to expand from the wound. Not every Khephurath possessed a soul, however. Those without one could not establish a connection to Lutu on their own. As a result, they often formed bonds with those that could, relying upon them to heal, feed, and deposit whatever they had captured. But even those capable of drawing Umaru could not consistently choose what emerged from it. A wound might grow exactly what the creature needed, or it might grow something entirely useless. The rare Khephurath capable of controlling this process were known as the evolving class. They did not merely choose how their bodies expanded from wounds. They could deliberately alter their forms according to whatever task stood before them, sometimes restructuring themselves in the middle of a fight. Nests were perhaps the most important example of what prolonged exposure to Umaru could produce. They were essentially enormous living walls made from stabilized Umaru. Other Khephurath groups would gather nearby life forms and bring them to members of this class, binding their captives directly to these behemoths. The captured creatures would slowly transfer their structural identity into the nest. There, their templates would mix with those already stored within it, losing their original form as they merged and became corrupted by one another. The first examples of beastmen emerged through this process. Everything about the Khephurath seemed random, but whether they knew it or not, every Khephurath had a part to play.